Hey, hey, welcome to Film Fanatics. We are three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
And welcome to the show. Now, with Labor Day behind us, this week we're going to reveal our picks for best and worst movies of the summer. And in Joe's case, we've got the most disappointing movies of the summer. We're also going to get into some new releases and our weekly triple feature roundup of older movies. We start with our new classic, the indie comedy Safety Not Guaranteed. Our old classic, picked by Joe, it's a good one, The Untouchables. And movie number 2 in our Oscar nominee A to Z, About a Boy. Now, before we get started, though, we talked last week at the top of the show about the controversial choice to cast Ben Affleck as the new Batman in the upcoming Man of Steel movie. Then, a few days after that, came the news that Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad is going to be playing Lex Luthor, which was met with the exact opposite of the Affleck news. Everybody loves Bryan Cranston pretty much, and he was universally accepted in the role. However, unfortunately, the news has been officially shot down by Cranston himself. But I wanted to touch on this for a minute, and with all things Superman, we turn to Joe first. Now, Joe, do you think he would make a good Lex Luthor? Are there better choices out there to be had?
Well, when I heard that the news was debunked, I was actually kind of sad because I was fairly familiar with his work, but recently I just started watching Breaking Bad, and I have to say, really, he is giving a great performance. He's a great actor in that show. I would love to see him as Lex Luthor. I think it's absolutely perfect casting. No one else really comes to mind for me, but ironically, one of the few good things about Superman Returns, I think, was Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor. So if anybody else was going to come out besides Bryan Cranston, I think Kevin Spacey would probably be my next pick. But hey, hopefully we can bring Bryan Cranston back because I think he'd be a great choice.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping it's maybe just all like
build up.
Yeah, like build up and everybody wants it. No, I'm not doing it. And then the announcement, hey, he's doing it.
Because these days it's hard to keep a secret in Hollywood.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'd be a great choice as well. I really need to get on the stick with Breaking Bad.
Definitely.
But definitely call me a Cranston fan. I mean, he was certainly the best part of Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought he was great in Argo.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'd be a good choice. I do think Kevin Spacey did a great job in Superman Returns. I liked that movie more than most, I would say, but certainly the shining moment was anything with Kevin Spacey as Lex. Justin, what do you think about all this?
I have to completely agree with both of you on this one. I think Cranston is an absolute dynamite choice for playing Lex Luthor. But Kevin Spacey, I could not agree more with the fact that he was by far the best part of Superman Returns, having arguably even more screen time than the actual hero himself, played by Brandon Routh. When I saw it, I honestly thought it might as well have been called Lex Luthor Returns, given his prominence.
That would have been a better title, definitely.
Couldn't agree more. But yeah, I hope it's almost like a campaign to get him interested in the role, and
that's kind of what I'm hoping.
I think so too.
All right, so let's get to the new releases we have in store for you this week. There's a couple that all three of us saw, and the first of that is Riddick, which is the third in the Chronicles of Riddick series. The first one they've done actually in 9 years, but of course with Vin Diesel's stars rising once again with the Fast and Furious movies, I guess they decided to go ahead and make that third movie. Joe, we're going to start with you on this one. What did you think of Riddick?
Overall, I'd say I really liked it. I have some experience. I think, unlike you, Dan, I have seen the previous films, Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick, and I will say that it's not the best of the trilogy, but I don't think it's the worst. I thought the storyline was pretty solid. It delivered as a pretty good action sci-fi movie. I thought the performances were pretty good. There were a couple good one-liners in there I liked. I liked the otherworldly nature of the world, and even though the first 10-15 minutes of the movie were kind of slow, I felt that it was still interesting. And they really toned back the narration, which oftentimes I think killed in the sequels. They really overdid it with Vin Diesel, or as Riddick, just kind of narrating everything in this grueling monologue. And they cut that back a bit, which I think was a good choice. Overall, I mean, it kind of deals with some aspects of the Chronicles of Riddick, which they acknowledge. And even though it was kind of a messy film, I was happy that they did at least make a pass at what happened with it. But it's really more of a spiritual sequel to Pitch Black, I think. So if people are more a fan of that film, I think they'll enjoy this one more. On the whole, I thought it was decent. I gave it a B-.
Okay. Yeah, and for me, you did hit on something there because, right, this is the first in the series that I've seen. Going into it, I didn't really know much. I mean, I had a minor background from, seeing commercials over the years or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you're right. They didn't really... For somebody that's new to the Riddick universe, I didn't know a whole lot that was going on. They explained nothing.
And I'll say I guess that's one of the negative aspects of the film is that it is a film made for the fans. Like, you would have to have at least seen the 2 previous films, or one of them, to have any idea who Riddick is or what the story's about. It's really more for the fans, and one of the nice things I thought about it was that Vin Diesel did fund for the film himself because he knew the fans wanted it.
Oh.
And that's one reason he actually kept taking the Fast and Furious contracts, because he enjoys playing Riddick, and he knew that a lot of the fans wanted it. So I thought that was kind of nice. He actually helped bring it, so it really is a film for the fans. So take that into account, I guess.
Yeah, and that was sort of, Riddick isn't, say, Spider-Man. I mean, you don't need background when you see a Spider-Man movie because okay, he got bit by a spider that was radioactive, now he's Spider-Man.
Basically 50 years of comic book lore.
Right. With Riddick, it's the lore isn't quite there, and so for me, I was a little lost. But aside from that, I didn't really care about any of these characters. I didn't care about Riddick. I didn't care about the people that were hunting him. I didn't care about their own fights with each other. Also, there were 15 to 20 minute stretches where Riddick showed up for like a 5-second cameo where he didn't even say anything. The camera just panned up and, oh, there he is in the rafters. Oh, those silly hunters, they don't see him. And then they go back to the silly hunters fighting amongst themselves for another 10 minutes.
I actually think it's interesting you bring that up, because this is something that, if you aren't familiar with the franchise, you won't understand. That was kind of like a running joke in Pitch Black, where Riddick is almost like has a supernatural element to him because he's like an expert assassin mercenary. He can just pop up wherever he wants. Okay. So that is something that has carried over from the other films. It might not work well narratively, but that is something that's always been there.
Yeah, I mean, just to that degree, I mean, it sort of reminds me of what Justin just said about Superman Returns. Might have well have been called Lex Luthor Returns. I felt like this was the bounty hunters and kind of the person that they were hunting. Mm-hmm. So that sort of didn't work for me. I thought the humor wasn't really there. The attempts at humor fell flat for me. And all in all, I just thought it was a boring, confusing mess. Not a whole lot for me to love. I thought there were a few stylistic things that were cool, that worked. I thought, the last part of the film was at least a little bit engaging. But I cannot give Riddick much more than a D. Justin?
Well, before I begin, I have a question for both of you. How do you feel about the actual character of Riddick?
Well, unfortunately, because he's not in the movie all that much, I don't know what to feel about it. I mean, obviously, he shows some positive attributes as a person. It's not like he's a bad guy, and that's made clear. But other than that, I don't really know much about him. I mean, I didn't care about him at all. I didn't think he was engaging, and maybe that's because I don't have the history to back it up.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, maybe if I saw one of the other movies and saw him in a more prominent role, or I mean, he obviously kicked butt and he knows what he's doing in that arena. But I don't really find him a great character or a poor character. I just find him a question mark for me.
Well, actually, that you brought up a good point, Dan. I think that there are some plot points that actually played into the events of this film that were directly related to Pitch Black and slightly to Chronicles. So there was some character to build off of. And I think I know where you're going with this, Justin. I think that he is a pretty cool main character. He has some grounds as an action star. He's got a lot of cool mystery to him. And he's got a really interesting personality. He's cool. He's got that cool factor that Vin Diesel brings, and I think it blends pretty well with the character of Riddick from the comics. I think he's a solid character, but I think I know where you're going with this, Justin, and let me see if I'm right.
I wanted to ask you guys this because I knew Joe was familiar with this, and I know Dan is new to the series. For me, the series, first of all, has a bit of an identity crisis. Pitch Black feels much more like a horror film with some action elements, and Riddick is actually not the main character. He's more or less a supporting character, and you don't really know a whole lot about him. However, Chronicles of Riddick plays out more like a sci-fi thriller with Riddick as the main character, and they add a bit more story information about him. And to be honest, after getting his cult following from Pitch Black, it kind of killed the mythology for me. With Riddick, I think it's trying to split the difference, and it doesn't really come off as well as it should or wants to. Vin Diesel tries to play him as best he can, The major issue with it is just simply the dialogue is horrendous in this movie. The action sequences are okay up until about the third act, where it just becomes an overbloated ripoff of Aliens. There isn't a whole lot of story, so you don't feel like you're getting anywhere with the Riddick universe. Honestly, if they do another Riddick movie, which I will be more than open for, I would really love to see Riddick return to a supporting character role, because I feel that was his character that he's good at. We've seen this with a lot of other movies like Pirates, where they made Jack Sparrow the main character, and Cars, where they made Mater the main character for the majority of Cars 2. I just think this is another case where the sidekick should not be in the driver's seat. For me, I thought it just dragged on, and it really suffered for that. Riddick for me is getting a D.
All right, our next movie is Getaway, and Joe saw this one as well. In this, Ethan Hawke plays an ex-race car driver whose wife gets taken hostage, and he basically has to complete a handful of illegal tasks in this car he's given, or his wife dies. Then about 20 minutes in, Selena Gomez enters the picture, telling him that this is her car, and he stole it, and blah, blah, blah. So now she is involved with everything he's doing as well. There was quite literally nothing good about this movie. It was basically uninteresting car chase after uninteresting car chase. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Selena Gomez is just atrocious. I mean, she's laughable. And even Ethan Hawke, who I normally like very much, is basically sleepwalking here through the role. For me, Getaway rivals Spring Breakers as the worst film of 2013, which, if you remember, also had a completely unappealing turn by Selena Gomez. Joe, what'd you think?
Pretty much what you said, Dan. I really don't feel like talking about this one too much. Basically, this
I don't blame you.
This movie just tries to jam too much in I think an 80-minute time block, and it doesn't really do anything. It has no redeemable characters, nothing really interesting going on. Really, it put me to sleep, and I think that says something, because that's rare to do, especially with the amount of action was in it. I'm giving this one a solid F.
I didn't give my grade, but as you can probably tell, it's an F from me as well. Justin?
Well, it's no surprise to tell everyone that this is also an F for me as well. This is a plot hole-ridden mess. It has arguably some of the most disorienting action sequences I have ever seen. It isn't even really worth talking about the story, given the fact that even the director seems to only care about having stuff blow up or having a car crash. Ethan Hawke and Selena Gomez, much like Dan emphasized, are absolutely atrocious in the lead roles. The villain...
And there's no chemistry between them either.
Exactly. The villain, you never exactly understand what he's trying to do or why he's making him do all this. It just goes off in 20 different directions. It just feels like a sad excuse for an action movie. Do not see this movie. Getaway is a complete and utter F.
And can somebody please stop telling Selena Gomez she can act? She's very pretty. She could be a cover girl or a model or something, but she's awful in everything I see her in. Okay, let's move on to Closed Circuit. Justin, I'm going to let you talk about this one first. Joe missed out on this one, but Justin and I went the other day and saw that. So Justin, what about Closed Circuit?
Well, for anyone that doesn't know, Closed Circuit is about two lawyers taking on what is considered to be the trial of the century after a devastating bombing in England. Though as the two start to go deeper inside the case, it seems to give off a much more mysterious vibe and conspiracies with MI5 as they struggle to avoid becoming targets themselves. I'll be honest, this is a very wishy-washy thriller, but one of the best things that it has going for it is the accentuation of giving the security cameras as a POV motif. It really helps emphasize the feeling of paranoia one might get in an over-secure community, and it really helps generate suspense in some of the more draggy spots of the film. I'm not going to say it was perfect. The romantic subplot between Eric Bana and Rebecca Hall, who some might know from Iron Man 3, just doesn't work. They bring it up earlier, and it feels, to be honest with you, kind of sloppy. It's not a bad movie. It could have been a whole lot better, but it's worth a look if you need a DVD rental. Closed Circuit for me is getting a C+. Dan?
All right, well, I find it just below the average mark. I actually give it a C-. I thought the plot was completely muddled. You're absolutely right about the love story. It was a throwaway. There was nothing there. But Rebecca Hall was very good. I liked her in Iron Man 3. I liked her here. I'm interested to see, what kind of stuff she does in the future, because the couple average movies I've seen her in this year, she overperformed in. It just, for me, didn't come together. But I will say that I liked the point of view kind of stuff they were doing with it, especially if you compare it to Getaway, when they had the cameras inside the Ethan Hawke car. Here they had closed circuit cameras all over the place, and it was sort of an interesting way to look at the plot and stuff. But for me, it was just sort of a mess. So I do have to give it a C minus. And the final new release film we're going to talk about is actually just for me. These guys didn't get to see it, but it's the Mortal Instruments City of Bones. And this is based on the popular young adult book series, if you don't know. Lily Collins is the star of it, who is the daughter of Phil Collins. And she's a teenager who finds out she's the latest in a long line in the family of shadow hunters, which is a secret group of warriors protecting the world from demons and werewolves and things like that. So she joins up with these other shadow hunters to help save the world. I mean, basically, it's another attempt to score with the Twilight crowd now that that series has wrapped up. And it's the third attempt this year alone. You had The Host and Beautiful Creatures. It's much better than The Host, which I gave an F to earlier in the year. It's slightly better than Beautiful Creatures. Not being a Twilight fan, unfortunately for this movie and the others, the only real young adult series recently I have to compare it to is The Hunger Games, which I love. So it's not really going to end well for those sort of following in the footsteps. But this one actually is all right. Lily Collins does a pretty good job, and the plot is actually pretty engaging. Definitely more so than The Host. The love triangle that you have in all these movies, that one for this movie fell sort of flat. The one guy is just such a loser. You don't root for him at all. You really want the shadow hunter that she's hanging out with to win that battle. But it was better than I thought it would be, and I give Mortal Instruments City of Bones a C+. All right, now we're going to move on to this week's top 10. And we had Labor Day last week, so that means summer movie season is now officially closed. It kicks off every year with the beginning of May. Iron Man 3 was the first movie of the summer, and it goes all the way through Labor Day. So what we're going to do is talk about our top 10 movies of the summer, and then Justin and I are going to give our bottom 3, since we have seen pretty much everything out there. Joe is more selective. He doesn't like to see crap. So for Joe, instead of bottom 3, we're just going to have him talk about his most disappointing films of the summer. First, we're going to read our numbers 10 through 4, and then we'll go over our top 3s individually. Justin, we're going to start with you, and what is your number 10?
Well, before I kick off number 10, I'd like to begin with my honorable mention. Mud, which we talked about in episode 1, came out quite literally the week before summer actually started, but we didn't get around to actually seeing it till about May 10th. So I felt by that much we should at least leave it as an honorable mention, and I believe these two are in agreement with me on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I included it, it would certainly be number 1. Joe, I think you'd probably agree.
Well, I'll echo you guys. If this technically was in the summer, it would easily be number 1. It's a fantastic film. We talked about that, so everyone knows about that.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Justin.
All right, but anyways, back to the list. Number 10 for me was This Is the End. I thought this was a very original concept. I thought the actors playing themselves as almost self-parody was brilliant and hilarious. Admittedly, it was a little scattershot in its humor when I tried to improv some things. But for the most part, it worked. And I thought it was one of the better comedies that has come out this summer. Number 9 for me was The Way, Way Back. Now, I want to bring up the fact that this would have been higher if it weren't for the first hour, where it just felt uncomfortable. It might as well have been called The Wonderful Adventures of Selfish Parents. The kid doesn't really have a whole lot to do, but once Sam Rockwell shows up as his goofy mentor at the water park, it's just rip-roaringly funny, and it's a very nice combination between comedy and drama. I just wish the first hour had been just as good, so I had to leave that at number 9. Number 8 for me is one that we talked about earlier in our podcast, which was The Conjuring. When I first saw the trailers, I thought it looked like a very interesting retro kind of ghost story. I was pleasantly surprised. It definitely had some very good jump scenes. I thought it was very well structured. It took its time, which you don't see often in a lot of modern day horror movies. And I thought the payoff was great. I really can't wait to see what James Wan does next with Insidious Chapter 2. Number 7 for me was Elysium. I thought after District 9, the director did a pretty good job for his sophomore effort. I'm not going to say it was as good, but it came together well. Matt Damon, who's earlier in his career I was a big fan of, nowadays not so much. I mean, he gives a decent performance in this, and the action is very raw and very exciting, and the storyline really comes together pretty well. Political overtones might be a little too much for some, but for me, it was a good one, so I'm leaving that at 7. Number 6 was Lee Daniels' The Butler. What else can be said? The performances were phenomenal. The story is excellent. Admittedly, repetition does get in the way of it. It may run on a smidge too long, but it is a mighty good movie, and if anyone hasn't seen this yet, please go out and see it. Number 5 for me is Edgar Wright's The World's End. I'm not going to reiterate any more than we've talked about in the last podcast. I thought it was incredibly funny. It's probably my favorite comedy that's come out this year. It is my least favorite of the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy. I would say Shaun of the Dead is by far my favorite, but it's only by a smidge in terms of being my least favorite. The performances are great. The action's hysterical. The ending goes out a little bit in left field, but it still is an overall pretty good product. And number 4, Man of Steel. Now, I know a lot of people are very divided as to whether or not how to feel about this one. My main goal for this movie, my overall expectations for this one, were simply, please be better than Superman Returns. I really loved the Richard Donner Superman movies, 1 and his cut of number 2. And I really think there's a way to bring that back to the screen. Zack Snyder and produced by Christopher Nolan completely brought it home for me. The storyline was very interesting. We finally got a reason to why Krypton was going to inevitably blow up. Henry Cavill was a great Superman. He had a lot of dimensions to his character, and he really brought that out. I am extremely excited to see where they go with the upcoming Batman vs. Superman movie, and then Man of Steel 2, and eventually, I'm sure, Justice League, provided all goes well. So I'm leaving that at number 4.
All right, Joe, let's kick off your top 10.
All right, my number 10, like Justin, is This Is the End. I thought it was a really awesome comedy. My only real issue with it was, I guess, the fact that I thought some of the theological humor wasn't really explored as much as I think it could have been. It was really just kind of a framing device. But other than that, just the actors being themselves, as you said, Justin, was great. I love Seth Rogen. I love James Franco. I love all the actors. They were kind of just making fun of themselves. It was really great. And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. I mean, This Is the End was a really fun comedy. That was my number 10. Number 9 for me was Lee Daniels' The Butler. Once again, yeah, it ran on maybe a little too long. I thought that it also had some repetition, and not everybody in the ensemble cast may have gotten as much screen time as they deserved, but hey, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s back, and that made us all happy. guy really needs to get back and get noticed again, because he's a fantastic actor. But no, Forrest Whitaker, he's a great actor. He's one of my faves. Really does a great performance, and though his narration is up there with Morgan Freeman as being so gentle that it can put you to sleep, it really explored some really interesting concepts within the civil rights movement that haven't been explored too much on film, so that's definitely number 9 for me. Number 8 for me was The Heat. I thought it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I like Sandra Bullock. I was kind of unfamiliar with Melissa McCarthy, but she was pretty good too. And I thought they had a fairly good chemistry. I thought it was a good buddy cop action movie, and it was just a fun comedy for me. I really enjoyed it, and once again, I think it might have run a little too long, but on the whole, I enjoyed that, and that was my number 8. Number 7 was The Wolverine for me. And kind of similar to Man of Steel, I was just kind of hoping that this Wolverine movie would be much better than the last Wolverine movie we got, which was terrible both as a comic book adaptation and just as a film in general. But I thought The Wolverine was pretty solid. I thought that the story really explored elements of the comic books that haven't been put on screen yet. I think that Hugh Jackman's really coming into his own as Wolverine, even more so than he was originally. I mean, he's always been pretty good in the role, but I feel like as he's aged, as he's gotten used to the character, he's really beginning to look the part. He's really beefing up, getting himself more into the stunts, and he's gotten fully absorbed into the character, and I thought his performance is always good as usual. Thought the villain was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. It's probably one of the better comic book movies I've seen recently. So that's my number 7. My number 6 is Monsters University. So unlike a lot of people, Monsters Inc. is actually not one of my favorite Pixar movies. I think it's pretty good, but It's never been one of my personal favorites. Admittedly, I haven't seen it in a while. But this one I thought with Mike and Sully, it really explored a lot of cool aspects of college life and kind of balanced it out with the Monsters, Inc. humor. I thought it was really cute and lovable, and it was a pretty solid story, especially the last act. If the last act had been like the whole movie, I think it would have easily been one of the best Pixar films. I thought it was just great. Really had you gripped and invested the characters. It was awesome. And that was my number 6. My number 5 was another kids movie that I liked slightly better, and that was Despicable Me 2. Once again, I liked the first film, but this one I just liked more. I liked the fact that Steve Carell's character as Gru got to explore some of the elements of being a single father. I thought they touched on that, plus the minions and the kids are adorable. And spoiler alert here, El Macho was a great villain. I thought he was hilarious. Probably one of the most memorable cartoon baddies in a while. I thought it was a fun story. I really liked the female lead. I liked the romantic elements there. I hope she's a bigger part in future installments. But yeah, Despicable Me 2 was awesome. I can understand why it did so well at the box office. Just a great family movie. And that was my number 5. My number 4, reiterating what Justin said again, was The World's End. I love Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. I thought they did a great job. I thought all the members of the cast did a good job. And there was just a lot of fun to be had. A lot of great character exploration balanced with some really cool, witty comedy and some over-the-top stunts. It was just a lot of fun. Also, not my favorite in the trilogy. I actually kind of still prefer Hot Fuzz the most, but this one is still right up there with all of them as being excellent films. And so that was definitely my favorite comedy of the summer at number 4. Dan?
Very good. Good list so far.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to echo these guys and give my number 10 as This Is the End. I thought it was very funny. I really, really enjoyed the aspect of the guys playing themselves and sort of riffing on their careers and stuff like that. For once, I actually enjoyed a Danny McBride role. He's one of my least favorite comedic actors out there, but I thought he was really funny in this, and it sort of, as the rest of the movie did, poked fun at all of them. It sort of poked fun at him being sort of a jerk in real life and that kind of thing. Obviously played up a little bit for laughs. My number 9 is Elysium. I thought it was a great sci-fi movie. We talked about this on a podcast before, so I won't go into too much detail, but I thought Matt Damon did a great job. Unlike Justin, I like Matt Damon still. I liked when he bought the zoo. I liked when he was born the character, not when he was, entered into the world.
I'm sure you like that too.
I
did. I liked when he was born.
I'm sure The Birth of Matt Damon would be an Academy Award-winning film.
But so I'm a fan. So Elysium is my number 9. My number 8, which I think Justin will enjoy, is Before Midnight. We talked about how terrible Ethan Hawke was in Getaway. Here, he really, really hit it home. This is the third installment in the Before trilogy, or Before series, I guess you could say, with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Not having seen the other two movies, I thought it was just a really great character study. A lot of good conversation came up in it, a lot of realistic dialogue, so I really enjoyed that one. My number 7 is The Great Gatsby. I know that I may be alone, certainly in this room, but in many rooms with this choice. I know it was not looked upon as such a great film, although it did very well at the box office, probably in part thanks to Leonardo DiCaprio and to the story just being so beloved. But I thought Baz Luhrmann did a decent job with it. His directing style is not my favorite. When he, puts the current music into the 20s, I don't like that. That's the biggest, for me, mistake of the movie. But I thought the story obviously is great. It's a classic. But the performances here is where it really worked. Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio specifically are fantastic, and the women were great as well. So that was my number 7. Number 6 is a little-known film that you might not be familiar with, called 20 Feet from Stardom. It's a documentary that I saw this summer, basically about background singers, and it takes us back all the way to the 60s when the Rolling Stones, were recording things like Gimme Shelter, and it takes you into the present. And specifically, they focus on about 5 or 6 people who have been in the industry for 20, 30 years and how they've made their career out of it. And it's just a very, very interesting film. So I would recommend that one to anybody. I'm sure it'll be on DVD very soon. 20 Feet from Stardom was the name of it. My number 5 is Star Trek Into Darkness. I loved the first movie. I know Joe's very excited about this choice. I thought the second movie in the new reboot from J.J. Abrams was almost as good. Wasn't quite as good as the first one, but boy, just by like a hair or two. I thought the action was great. The story was just fantastic, and I don't know if they could have assembled a better cast of people to recreate the roles made so famous by Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner, and all the others. So that is my number 5. My number 4 is The Conjuring. I thought it was a fantastic horror movie, a great throwback to some of the old classics of horror. And I had the daylight scared out of me. I was crying. I thought it was a very effective horror movie. And that lands in at my number 4. All right, Justin, why don't we talk about our bottoms now? We're gonna go around, and what was your number 3 on the bottom 3?
My number 3 for the bottom 3 was The Smurfs 2. It was just a completely painful to watch kids movie. It was annoying. It wasn't funny. It tried way too hard to be cute when it wasn't. It just didn't work. The only reason that this got the number 3 spot and not Planes is despite Planes pretty much completely stealing Pixar's playbook in terms of how to do a Cars movie, I at least found Planes relatively entertaining, whereas in Smurfs 2, I was fighting to keep myself from walking out of the theater.
All right, my number 3 on the bottom was Planes, actually. I definitely thought it was worse than the Smurfs 2. Smurfs 2 had a few comedic elements and some of the actors I enjoyed. We talked about this on a previous show, but Planes was just, for me, the bottom of the Disney barrel. And to pass it off as if it is a Pixar movie is even more disgusting. Joe, since we're not doing bottom 3 for you, what was the third most disappointing movie of the summer?
Just want to say that I'm happy I didn't see either of those films. From what I saw of them, they looked pretty bad. My number 3, actually, in kind of a contradiction to what you guys said, was actually The Conjuring. And you guys pointed out an interesting point that I think I went into this movie with the wrong idea. But there was a lot of hype around this movie, saying that it changed the game for horror movies, where I guess it was really more of a throwback. But I was expecting something really new when I saw this, and I'm going to say my number 3 was The Conjuring. People said this movie changed the game, and I didn't think it changed the game. I didn't think it blew me away. It was good. It certainly creeped me out at points. I liked the characters and the story. I think it took its time and had more class than most horror movies do these days, especially exorcism ones, which they just pump out almost on a monthly basis, it seems. But Conjuring was a good movie, certainly, and I recommend people see it, but it just didn't live up to the hype for me. So that was my number 3.
Justin, your number 2 worst.
My number 2 worst for the summer has to go to somebody truly deserving of it over the past couple of years. M. Night Shyamalan's After Earth. For anyone who doesn't know, Dan and I have a tendency to poke fun at Jaden Smith's atrocious accent as the main character in the film. So instead of calling it Earth, he sort of just prefers to call it Earth.
He really does. It's so sad. I don't know who told him that was I mean, I guess it was M. Night Shyamalan probably, but anything else to add on that?
Just not a good movie. The look of it could have been decent. The overall concept, if they had actually went for what they were originally trying to do, which was having a father and a son as, I believe, Boy Scouts trying to make their way out of the wilderness in an everyday forest, would have been awesome, but instead the sci-fi setting just seems odd. Congratulations, M. Night Shyamalan. You made a movie almost as bad, if not worse, than The Last Airbender.
Wow.
It actually would have been better for me if they were Boy Scouts, because then I wouldn't have to hear Jaden try to pronounce Ranger in that accent where he can't do R's. There's no R's in Boy Scouts, and I think that would have, for me, helped the movie just a bit. My number 2 is a drama called Museum Hours, which basically, this museum caretaker, security guard, he meets this woman who's in town for her sister who's in the hospital, and she's looking for friends. They become friends, blah, blah, blah. It was super boring. And then for some reason in the middle of the movie, this woman shows up giving a tour in the museum to patrons who are not part of the movie. The woman's not part of the movie. And for 10 minutes, she talks about the different artwork, and it's like a history lesson. and then she leaves and we never hear from her again. It was the most bizarre thing. So Museum Hours gets my number 2 worst of the summer. Joe, how about most disappointing?
My number 2 for most disappointing would probably be World War Z. And this is because there was a lot of hype surrounded around this movie, of course. People were talking about this one for a few years, I believe. And it was doing pretty well at the box office, and a lot of people were telling me that they actually enjoyed it, which kind of surprised me. Admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about the book this is based on, so I know it does take some stretches from the source material. Overall, I thought it was just a pretty average, mediocre zombie flick, kind of taking away some elements from it because it was PG-13 and not R. That was kind of a negative aspect right there. I thought it was okay, the performances were alright, but I didn't see anything truly great here, and I can definitely tell that there was something taken from the original material. So World War Z would be my number 2 most disappointing for the summer.
Alright, and Justin, your least favorite movie of summer 2013?
Well, it's one that we've already talked about, Dan. Getaway. I'm not going to reiterate anything that I haven't already said. This movie is just plain bad.
I could not agree more, and it's my number 1 worst of the summer. Nothing more needs to be said. Do not ever see this movie. Joe.
If I had made a number 1 worst, that would easily be it. My number 1 most disappointing for the summer, and these guys probably both saw this coming a while back, that would be Iron Man 3. Now, this film really tried to build off some of the aspects from the previous 2 films, try to tie the story arc together and just end it in a nice little bow, wrapped up. But really, there was just a lot of potential here with exploring different elements of Robert Downey Jr.'s character. He, of course, did a great job as Iron Man, perfect casting, everyone knows that. But there was a whole side plot with him going through some PTSD due to the elements in the Avengers. Those previous events really had an impact on him, but it doesn't really go anywhere in the film. That was one of the most frustrating things. They kept promising, much like Iron Man 2, that this was going to be a darker, more serious story that was going to go deeper into exploring Tony Stark's character. And really, it just kind of played off as something that could be accessible to everybody, and just the marketing was really, really off for this one. But really, the biggest problem I had, and I'm not alone with this, is what they did with the Mandarin. They advertised and teased the Mandarin being played by Ben Kingsley as this really awesome, threatening villain. Admittedly, they changed him for the film to make him more acceptable to modern audiences, which would have been fine. He looked great. People were excited, and honestly, for the first act or so of the film, I was really invested to see what was going to happen with this guy. And if for some reason you haven't seen it, I won't say what happens, but the direction they went, I guess they were trying to be funny, but it didn't work for me, didn't work for the fans, didn't work for a lot of moviegoers in general. So Iron Man 3, not horrible or anything, but really, for being a follow-up to the Avengers, not at all what I was expecting. My number 1 most disappointing film of the summer.
I'm glad you said that, because if I were making a most disappointed list, Iron Man 3 would probably be my number 1 as well. It just, everything you said. I mean, I don't know anything about the Mandarin or the backstory there.
You probably could feel it, though.
I could feel that it was, there's no way that they would do what they did in the movie in the comic books and have any sort of, serious aspect to it and have it be taken serious by the fans. So, yeah, like I said earlier, I liked Rebecca Hall in it. There were a few positive things, and I think I gave it a B- or something. But
no, honestly, I
think
I probably give it a B+ or an A- too. It's a good film, but just for my standards for the Marvel movies,
I was quite disappointed in it. We're actually going to start with you, Joe, for the top 3. So what was your number 3 best movie of the summer?
My number 3 has been mentioned by both you guys, and that is Elysium, Neil Blomkamp's second directorial film. And I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a good, solid action sci-fi movie, which we haven't really seen too many great ones in a while. That genre's kind of making a comeback, which I'm happy for. Sci-fi is coming back due to probably one other film on my list. But Elysium I thought was really good. I liked some of the political aspects. They worked for me. I thought the visuals are great. There's definitely some District 9 feel there. Story, not quite as experimental as that one, but still excellent. Matt Damon gives a great performance. The villain was awesome. Jodie Foster, who I love, could have been in it more, but she did a great job too. Really, this film was really solid, and I think that even people that aren't really familiar with sci-fi or comfortable with it could really go into this and enjoy it. So overall, that is my number 3 best film of the summer.
Very cool. It's nice to see that all 3 of us agree on some of these features. It's cool to see them pop up because my number 3 has also been mentioned by both these guys. It's Lee Daniels, The Butler. Not much more needs to be said than it's just a great ensemble piece, Great casting, great story, great everything. So that was my number 3. Justin?
My number 3 is one that didn't make it to a whole lot of theaters, but when I caught it on DVD, I thought it was really something special, and I had to put it on this list just for that sole reason. What Maisie Knew. I thought it was a risky move taking a period piece set long time ago and placing it in the modern day. Usually doesn't work for a whole lot of movies, but for this, it fits beautifully. The performances are solid. You really feel the girl's pain as she struggles to deal with both the mom's side and the dad's side as two parents going through a divorce. Anyone who's able to pass Julianne Moore off as a rocker is worthy of praise in my book. It's just a really, really underrated movie this summer, and for that reason alone, I had to make it my number 3.
I'm going to echo that as well because it just did miss my top 10 by 1 or 2 slots. I really also enjoyed What Maisie Knew and would recommend it. Joe?
My number 2 for the summer is Star Trek Into Darkness. I have heard, Justin actually told me this, that apparently a lot of Star Trek fans are hailing this as now officially the worst Star Trek movie in the franchise, which I really don't understand because...
I can't believe it.
I think that has to be... I really don't understand that because, believe me, I've seen them all. There are some stinkers in there. This is not... This is not in that camp. I don't know. It's certainly not the best by far, but it's by no means the worst. Honestly, as a follow-up to the J.J. Abrams reboot, I thought that it was also, as Dan said, not as good, but still pretty darn good. I really enjoyed it. I thought the direction they took with Khan, was definitely worthy. I liked Benedict Cumberbatch. Of course, all the actors do a great performance. I think they really have captured the spirit of what those characters were about. It's still more of an action movie than I think Trek really should be, but it was fun. It was a good time. A lot of people liked it, and I'm glad it did well. Star Trek Into Darkness is my number 2.
My number 2 is Fruitvale Station, and it's largely already gone from theaters. It only lasted a few weeks, really, but I think we'll be hearing a lot about this movie come Oscar season. Michael B. Jordan as the lead character is phenomenal. If he doesn't get a Best Actor nod, I will be very surprised. And past winner for supporting actress, Octavia Spencer, is here as well in fine form. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets another nomination. The movie is gritty, it's real, it is based on a true story, but as we all know, sometimes that doesn't really translate to authenticity on screen, and I think here it absolutely did, and Fruitvale Station is my number 2.
My number 2 is also Fruitvale Station. There's little Dan has said that I can refute. I thought it was just a really well-told story of a day in the life of a young man who just ends up truly at the wrong place at the wrong time. I thought the performances were solid. Michael B. Jordan does a fantastic job. Admittedly, it may have taken a couple liberties as to whether or not some of the things that happened during the period in which the main character spends his time may have been exaggerated, but it does make sense regardless. I thought it was a really great movie. Anyone who hasn't seen this should seek it out.
Don't you agree that it would be shocking if Michael B. Jordan did not earn an Oscar nomination for this movie?
Oh, no, I completely agree.
Yeah. All right, Joe, what is your best movie of the summer?
My best movie this summer, you guys probably saw this coming. My number 1 of the summer is Man of Steel. And admittedly, this has to do partially with my feelings, as Justin said, just going and hoping it would be much better than Superman Returns, or at least slightly better. And wow, I think it is honestly one of the best Superman movies ever made. I thought it did a great job. The story was pretty solid. The villain was very compelling, I thought. There were a lot of great effects. Probably some of the best action I've seen. And of course, from Zack Snyder with the visuals, that's to be expected. Henry Cavill, I knew going in he was going to be a good Superman because I was familiar with his work. He's a really good actor. He did the part well. And I was really excited. A lot of the nods to DC, kind of subtly there, building things up. Hopefully they're taking some elements from Marvel and they're going to build up their universe. We'll see. But I did like the fact that the movie had a very serious story. It had some good themes. And it really did take time to explore more about Kal-El, a.k.a. Clark Kent's backstory. It was really true to the character. Got dark, got gritty, but still had those moments where it really just was feel good. It was larger than life. It had that cool balance of realism plus the superhero elements, which I thought were very good. And I loved it. So I'm just going to say Man of Steel was my number 1 for the summer.
My number 1 is Monsters University. I thought it was far and away the best animated film of the summer. Despicable Me 2 is second place, but a distant second for me. Monsters U was fantastic. As Joe already mentioned, they really captured the true college experience in so many different ways with this movie, between the characters and the competitions and just everything, the classroom settings. And it really was great to see Mike and Sully as they met and how they formed their friendship and how they got involved with the scaring program at Monsters, Inc., as we see, of course, in the first film in the series. And I'm with Joe, actually. I mean, I do enjoy Monsters, Inc. a lot, but in terms of the Pixar canon, it's probably my fifth or sixth favorite at best. So I think this one ranks right up there with the best of them, and Monsters U is my number one of the summer.
My number one, as I'm sure Dan already knows, is Before Midnight.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise is right. They spent a good 10 plus years just trying to make sure that the story for this one was good. It paid off in abundance. Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy have the same chemistry that they've had in the last two movies and show absolutely no sign of stopping. It's funny, it's sad, it's brutally realistic in the world of love. It's just an overall fantastic movie. I really hope they don't stop with this one and they keep building it. If we see another one in 6 to 8 years, hopefully the same amount of time that it took for us to get number 3, I will be more than willing to explore where they're heading next.
When I think that Judd Apatow kind of has taken a page from this book when he made This Is 40, because I think it is very interesting to follow these characters every 8 years, every 10 years, and see where they're going. Apatow, if you don't know, brought the characters that Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann played in Knocked Up, and 6 years later or whatever it is, brought it into This Is 40, and he's said on the record that he would like to see a This Is 50 and This Is 60, and I would love if more movie series actually did that with the authenticity and the realism that Before Midnight has. I think it's a very cool thing that they're doing with that.
I really hope they carry that over too. That's something you don't really see too much in film, and that really did remind me a lot of John Updike's Rabbit series. That kind of follows through a series of novels through one man's life every 5 or 10 years over a period of time. So that is interesting to know that that's being explored in film as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know about that story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're going to switch gears here and talk about our weekly triple feature. We watch 3 older movies every single week, and the first one is actually not quite so old. It's called New Classic, and that is a movie that's been released over the last couple of years that Justin and I really took a shining to, and some of them Joe has seen. This one he had not previously, so we'll talk about that. Then we have Old Classic, which we draw a name out of a hat, and this week's pick was from Joe, and he picked a great movie that we're going to talk about. And then finally we have our Oscar nominee night, and that is going alphabetically through all of the Oscar-nominated movies in the major categories, dating back to the beginning of the Oscars, and we have a great one to talk about for that today as well. First up, though, is our new classic, Safety Not Guaranteed. This was an indie comedy that came out last summer in theaters, and it stars Aubrey Plaza from Parks and Recreation and also Jake Johnson, who you may know from The New Girl. They basically work for this magazine, and they're looking for a story, and they find a little classified ad in the newspaper searching for somebody to go back in time with the person who wrote the ad, and it mentions in the ad that their safety is not guaranteed, I have only tried this once before, etc., etc. So the two of them track the guy down with another member of the magazine staff, and the gentleman in question, played by Mark Duplass, and Aubrey Plaza strike up a little friendship based on her wanting to come with him on this trek. And meanwhile, Jake Johnson's main goal for even going on the story is because he wants to meet up with an old crush that lives in the same town as the story is taking place. Now, Joe, since you were new to this movie, let's hear from you first. What did you think of Safety Not Guaranteed?
I want to start off by saying that I actually did enjoy the movie. I thought it was pretty good. I really did like the main character. I kind of liked her dry wit. I could definitely see a lot of those indie themes that pop up and were kind of recycled through those films. It's definitely very prevalent there. I liked the characters. I thought they were all enjoyable. I thought the story idea was very unique. I really liked that. I liked how the characters slowly build up their relationship over time. And I felt that there was, despite the ridiculousness of the situation, it also sort of seemed like something that could honestly happen. And the characters were very real and believable to me. There were a few things that I thought brought it down, and I think the biggest one for me starting off was probably the ending. I won't spoil it, but there is kind of a science fiction element to the story, obviously, and we're not entirely sure whether or not it's true or not. And the film really builds up one direction and then kind of switches gears, and it really caught me by surprise. And while I will admit, once again, I thought it was a cool move, I'm not entirely sure that it could have worked, and I think one of the biggest strengths to make the movie better would be to keep that sort of ambiguous as opposed to giving an actual answer to the question that everybody in the audience is thinking. So that was kind of one thing that brought it down a little bit for me. I also thought that while the main storyline between the two main characters was pretty good, that romance I really did enjoy, I thought that there were a B and C subplot. There was the reporter going to kind of rekindle his fire with an old flame. I liked the aspects in that story they were going for. I liked what they were trying to explore there and touch upon. And I actually kind of liked that character more than I thought I was going to. He was very human and believable, but I just thought they didn't tie that together quite as well or give a definitive answer in that one. It left that particular story a little more ambiguous as well. And I didn't really like that either. I just thought that it kind of didn't go as far as it should have. And the C plot, I thought, was executed a little better. Them taking this other kind of awkward, shy reporter, kind of going in with an internship just to gain more credits. He was this really nerdy, awkward guy who I also liked as well. And basically they try to get him laid. And I thought it was funny, and they kind of could have explored that a little bit deeper. And I like the fact that those other two characters to the B and C plots do intertwine, and I did like that. But once again, I liked the direction they took it, but we definitely could have seen more from that. I wanted, basically from this movie, I wanted the ending to be ambiguous, and I wanted less ambiguity from the two secondary plots, and I just wanted more overall. I wanted more time with these characters, which honestly is the sign of a good movie, because you should leave wanting more. Overall, I gave it a solid B. It was a good movie.
I actually really like the way they did the ending. When we saw it actually with two other people, and both of them echoed your same sentiments about the ending. I actually really like the way they ended it. I thought it was good. I definitely could have gone with an ambiguous ending as well. I think that would have worked, maybe for me just the same. But I really liked the choice that they made. But it is interesting that you say about the B and the C story, because I agree completely with that I could have done with more of that. It's a short movie. It's only about 80 minutes. And you could easily do an extra 5 or 6 minutes with each of those stories, and sort of, they could at least flesh out these other stories a little better. I think they sort of fleshed out the one with the intern a little bit more. You certainly see, what has happened when they try to, take him to a party and meet these women and what have you. But the storyline between Jake Johnson and the girl that he's trying to get with, really, I could have used a few more scenes of that. So I do agree with that. For me, this movie is all about the writing. It is so sharp, and all three of the main actors are in TV shows that I love. We already said that Aubrey Plaza comes from Parks and Recreation, Jake Johnson's from The New Girl. If you watch The Mindy Project, you might know Mark Duplass then as well. And so with the three of them, I really had a good feeling going into it. I like their humor just in general, but I liked the chemistry in this film. I liked the chemistry both between Aubrey Plaza and Jake Johnson, and with Plaza and Mark Duplass as the guy that wants to go back in time, especially the two of them as they become friends and something more sort of develops as they go along. But I thought the writing was very clever, and I do think that the story was just so original, and certainly not something that you see every day. For me, I had those few minor complaints that it could have maybe been fleshed out a little bit more, but I overall very much enjoyed Safety Not Guaranteed, and it gets a B+ for me. Justin?
I'd have to completely agree with you on the original concept. For anyone that doesn't actually know the origin story of Safety Not Guaranteed, this ad was actually published, and the screenwriters actually found it and decided to devote an entire script to it. And it pays off, and it actually works, which I found remarkably impressive. Aubrey Plaza, who I think is probably a lover-hater actress for her dry monotone, is put to great use here, especially when playing off an equally haunted character played by Mark Duplass, who I would say gives probably his best performance, and as long as I've seen his material. I thought it was incredibly funny. One of the most memorable sequences has to go to one of the world's slowest chase sequences between
That was good.
the leads and government agents.
Yeah.
And it just works so well. The B and C story, I have to agree with as well. I was actually okay with the way they wrapped up the B story. I think it might have benefited from maybe one or two more scenes. The C story just felt kind of goofy to me. I was actually very glad they put it to use in this. I just wish they had devoted maybe a little bit more with that as well. But with the B story, it wasn't that much of an issue. With the ending, I think it was one of those moments where the mystery is better left as a mystery. It doesn't necessarily need an answer. Are they actually going to go back in time? Are they not going to go back in time? Is Mark Duplass real or is he a fraud? And I think it would have benefited so much more from accentuating some of the main beat elements from the subplots and just leaving that part as more ambiguous and complementing that. It's still a great movie. It's definitely worth a watch, but I think 10 more minutes would have made this film all the better. Safety Not Guarantee also gets a B+ from me.
Yeah, it is rare that you can say, I wish this movie was longer. But at 80 minutes, there really was a couple of other avenues to explore. And I will say this, one of the quote-unquote industry terms with these kind of movies that I absolutely hate is meet cute, which is when, usually in a romantic comedy when the two people meet and they start to notice each other, whatever. But I have to say that the meet cute between Aubrey Plaza and Mark Duplass is fantastic. It's one of the best scenes of the movie. It's so adorable. She goes and visits him at work after they'd kind of been creeping on him for a little bit to find out who this guy is, and just the exchange they have in the banter is just so adorable. So for me, that was one of the better parts of the film. All right, we're going to move on now to the old classic that we watched this week, and this is a film I had not seen, and thank you, Joe, for bringing it. Joe's going to tell us about The Untouchables. Why did you decide to bring this movie to us?
Well, one thing I thought for my first outing, I thought it was just one that I knew everybody would probably like because it is an excellent film. I just think it, honestly, I'm not going to slow it down. I'm just going to say it's a masterpiece. It's just an excellent film. As Justin would probably say, it's Brian De Palma at his best. The reason I picked this film was because when I was a teenager, I had this fascination with the mafia and organized crime. I just wanted to learn everything about it. And one of the big parts of that was looking up mafia movies. And I've seen a lot of good ones. And this one was very unique because most mob movies, crime movies, they take place from the point of view of the gangster. This one takes place from the point of view of the good guys, the treasury agents who go on and try and take down Al Capone in 1930s Prohibition Chicago. And it focuses on Elliot Ness and his team, the Untouchables. And it's just a really awesome film. I really love the acting, the chemistry. There's just some great actors, some really solid dialogue. There's a lot of great one-liners that Sean Connery I think he spits off more in this film than any other besides maybe his James Bond films. He's just such a memorable character as Malone, the old beat cop that helps Ness take down Al Capone. And of course, Robert De Niro is great Al Capone, gives some of the most memorable lines as well from this film, which have been parodied over and over again in things like The Simpsons. And Elliot Ness is played by Kevin Costner, who is also a great actor, one of my favorites. And the film is solid. It's a good story. It has a lot of great action sequences, which are also very memorable. A lot of great characters. And I will admit that there are a few elements of cheesiness that kind of do obviously dated a little bit to being an 80s film with some of those 80s cliches, but they're fairly minor and forgivable and only pop up, I think, once or twice being really noticeable. But overall, I thought that it was just a great crime drama / action movie. Really holds up. I think it's virtually timeless. It's just excellent all around, and I would give it a solid A.
I totally agree. I mean, I can see why it is revered as one of the linchpins in its genre. I have not seen a ton of mob movies. I've sadly never seen the Godfather series. But I have seen Goodfellas, and I've seen some movies like that. But man, was this just so good. You're absolutely right with Sean Connery. He's so good, and he's got these just witty cracks that you don't really expect. I mean, these are like, serious crime-fighting men, and yet he has these little one-liners that are just so funny. And it is interesting to see a lot of these things that, I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and there are several different, phrases or scenes that have been parodied by The Simpsons and by another one of my old favorite shows, Cheers. that when they came on the screen, I was like, oh, okay, that's where that is from. That's a thing. Okay. And it's so well done. Kevin Costner is great here as well, like you mentioned. I have not seen him in a ton of movies. He was great in Man of Steel, I will say that.
Of course.
But other than that, I haven't seen him in too many films, to be honest. He wasn't really on my parents' best of list, so we didn't see a lot of Costner movies when I was a kid. But he really is great here as Elliot Ness. He really shines, I think, in the role. And yeah, De Niro is good. I wouldn't say it's his best performance, but he definitely, does a great job as Capone. It is sort of just a couple of those little 80s cliches that maybe brings it down from an A+ to an A. But for the most part, it really is a timeless film. And it's so very well done. And for me personally, I went last month to the National Crime and Punishment Museum in D.C., where they had an exhibit about Al Capone and the mobsters of this era, and it was sort of interesting to sort of read up on it, kind of like when we talked about Abe Lincoln last week, sort of the authenticity of it and all. It's a word I keep saying in this episode, but it really does ring true for a lot of the movies we're talking about.
You're right, though, with the sets and everything, and everything just looks very much like the 1920s.
Absolutely, like they really created that era. And it was just so well done in pretty much all aspects. So I do as well have to give The Untouchables an A. Now, Justin, you had seen this before, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
My favorite action movie. And much like Dan, I thank you very much for actually choosing to run that.
No problem.
For said reason. I've been looking for a great excuse to watch this, and I can't think of a better one in this situation. As Joe said, I do consider this Brian De Palma at his finest. I think more often than most, he's trying a little too hard to be like Hitchcock. But in this, his style just comes to life in bringing a gritty and yet exciting 1920s Prohibition era to life. And the script from David Mamet really helps emphasize that. The cast is absolutely unbelievable. It's remarkable that they've not only got the A-list actors in this movie, but they work as well as they do. Kevin Costner is sensational as Elliot Ness. Robert De Niro, admittedly not his best performance, but it is definitely up there. You will loathe his villain, and it just leads to so many great moments into whether or not Kevin Costner will ever actually be able to beat this man. And as they both said, Sean Connery manages to be not only a total action hero in this movie, but hysterical behind the scenes as Mike Malone, and it really helps get the movie going.
Yeah, I don't know who made that decision, but man, does it work.
He's
good. It really does, and it doesn't take you out of it either.
No.
It's really one of his best roles.
There's not much else I can say about it. The storyline's great. The gunplay is absolutely hair-raising at moments. It brings up suspense. You might say at some points it's a little over-exaggerated, but I feel for a movie like this, you almost sort of need that. It was an intense era, and things like that weren't exactly uncommon. And I felt like it really brought that to life. For anyone who hasn't seen Untouchables, don't miss out. Go check this out. It's well worth it. Absolutely timeless movie to me. Untouchables also gets an A.
And for those that don't know, Justin doesn't actually give A+, so the A is the highest grade that he has.
This is the cream of the crop.
The apex, yeah.
This truly is. This would be 100% for me.
And it's an interesting thing you said about the Hitchcockian aspect to it, because I had not thought of that, but I can totally see it.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of thinking about the scenes.
Of really is emulating the style, kind of this sort of noir-esque element, playing with like all these integral crime aspects, just like building up intensity, being larger than life, but also kind of gritty. Mm-hmm. Like that is very Hitchcockian. You're right.
Yeah. All right, our final movie we're going to talk about today is our Oscar nominee movie, and that is About a Boy, which was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay in 2002. And I am so glad that this came up early in the Oscar nominees, because I was probably going to run it at some point in our old classic slot. I love About a Boy. If you're unfamiliar, it's Hugh Grant starring as Will, this playboy bachelor who lives alone and doesn't work. He lives off royalties from this Christmas song that his father wrote. And in order to meet women, Will does things like go to single-parent groups and invent a 2-year-old son to garner some sympathy and some support from these single women. And it's through one of these groups that he meets a young boy, 12-year-old Marcus, who's played by Nicholas Hoult, who you might be familiar with his more recent work as an adult in things like Warm Bodies and one of Joe's favorites, X-Men First Class.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, Marcus has a lot of problems between school and his home life. And so because of that, he sort of takes a shining to Will and starts coming to his place every day after school, wanted or not, and their friendship grows from that. Now, Joe was the one that I think had seen About a Boy, but was not really remembering it too well or whatever. So, Joe, we're going to start again with you on this one.
Yeah, I think I saw this movie when I was about 13 or something, probably around the time it came out, a little after perhaps. But I have to say that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool film. I thought it was very, very uplifting, and it was just funny, and I thought it really balanced aspects of drama and comedy pretty well. Hugh Grant is an actor that I like, but I find that he kind of does more or less the same roles over and over again, kind of being this kind of awkward guy who stumbles over his words in these romantic comedies, like in one of my favorites, Notting Hill. This movie, I think, is honestly his best performance. I think this is really one of the best aspects of the writing, kind of meshing it well with this really good actor who was just excellently cast for the part, as being this guy who really is both unlikable and likable at the same time. And that really brings the human element to these stories that I like. And I thought that his chemistry with Nicholas Hoult is just really, really great. And the movie is aptly titled because it's about a boy. It's all about not just a young boy, it's about a boy who hasn't grown up yet. And it's really about his story of him just learning to find meaning in his life and just grow up. And through these two characters getting to know each other, they kind of solve both their problems, or at least make them easier to get through by finding each other, supporting each other, and becoming friends. I thought they both gave great performances. I loved both the characters. The writing was very solid. And I also really like Toni Collette. She usually plays the mom, everybody's mom in every movie ever. I like her a lot. And I was surprised to find that she was actually Australian, I think it is.
I believe so,
and of course, she's playing a British woman. That threw me off guard. But I thought she played probably one of her more dynamic characters. And I thought this movie was really interesting because it sort of defied cliches where Hugh Grant's character might have ended up with Toni Collette's character in the average romantic comedy/drama movie. But in this one, they decided not to do that. They decided to have something more realistic where these two characters met up, and through the son, they kind of help each other, and they really focus about the boy's story and helping him. The only real negative of the film was that I thought that they kind of dropped certain romantic elements, and they kind of shoved Rachel Weisz's character, who I was kind of upset because she got second billing to Hugh Grant on the title of the movie when I noticed that, and I just thought that was really surprising because her character, who is introduced as sort of this romantic interest for Hugh Grant about halfway through the movie, is just kind of shoved in there, and I thought that she was kind of a throwaway character who they didn't necessarily need to have there, so that was one of the big negatives for me. And the only other real negative I had was that really this film was just really, really good. I liked these characters and what they went through. Once again, kind of like with Safety Not Guaranteed, I wanted a little more. But overall, I thought it was really, really good. I gave it an A-.
And just for the record, it's not a spoiler to say that Hugh Grant and Toni Collette do not end up together. It's not even like there's really a romantic thing at all. You know, Marcus sort of hints at it, and hey, maybe you should date my mom, and it gets shot down pretty immediately.
No, you're right. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
It's just I thought that's funny because it is even said. You know, obviously Rachel Weisz is the romantic interest.
Right.
But no, I'm just saying it was defying cliches because in most movies of the era of that time,
absolutely,
like, they obviously would have tried to do that, and it wouldn't have worked because they were trying to be more, once again, a little more realistic and believable.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that for people in case they hadn't seen it.
No, guys.
Oh, now I know what happens. It's not a spoiler.
No, guys, I'm not spoiling it for you. I'm not spoiling it. Just you're spoiling the fact that Rachel Weisz isn't going to be in the movie as much as you think.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not The Fountain where she's with Hugh Jackman like every other scene. You know, it's not like that.
Justin, your thoughts on About a Boy?
All right, now before I go any further, I want to preface this with the statement that I did enjoy this movie. I think it is.
Here we go.
I love that. I love how I say that, and
Here
you guys
it
know it's like it's heading towards disaster. It's not. It's just got a few things that bothered me.
Go ahead.
I thought overall this was a very good movie. I thought it benefited immensely from the performances by Nicholas Hoult and Hugh Grant, playing off each other as essentially two boys learning to become men and get a little further in their lives. I thought their banter was both humorous and very serious at points. It's actually one of the few instances in cinema where a movie uses voiceover and actually complements the movie rather than taking you away from the element of what's exactly going on. You can relate to what they're thinking, and the dual narration from both of them in that means really helps give it a less biased feel. We're actually seeing it from both Will and Marcus's perspectives, and it's a very diverse perspective. I thought that was brilliant on the director's side. There were two main issues that really took me away from this movie. The first was, during the first quarter of the movie, there seems to be some sort of romantic comedy element coming up, which I was sort of rolling my eyes at. And then they sort of eschew that for another romantic interest, which turns out to be Rachel Weisz. But it just sort of feels like, did you guys just get bored and throw in a new plot element? It just seemed odd to me. And the other main issue is, for a movie that's going to use both comedic and dramatic elements, I feel as if there should be a good balance between the two. Instead, for me, it sort of came off as episodic. Sometimes it was really funny and goofy and kind of quirky, and other times it was deadly serious, and there was rarely a balance between the two. As I said before, I really enjoyed this movie. I recommend it completely to anyone. It's just, there were a couple of things I had issues with that took away from giving it a B+ or an A-, so I chose to give About a Boy a B.
That's really interesting, actually. I have one question though. I didn't really see like how the elements of drama and comedy didn't mesh well for you. Like, I thought that when they were doing that, the writers were trying to go for this more realistic approach where, much as we mentioned in life, moments can go from being incredibly funny and silly to being really serious. And I think that's what they were trying to go for. I guess I can understand why that didn't work for you, but I think that was actually part of their narrative.
Which maybe you're right about, but to me it just sort of seemed awkward that one minute we're laughing and the next it's really depressing. Maybe that is like life. I don't know. I felt like there was a better way to meld that into the story and have it work.
I'm glad you said that, Joe, because I thought the exact same thing when Justin said that, because to me, that happens in life all the time, that things are funny and hilarious and all of a sudden something happens. In this instance, which I think is probably one of your main examples, because it is probably the most dramatic part of the movie, at least the first real dramatic part that we see. But after their first play date, Marcus and Will and this woman that Will met are having a laugh and having a good time. They come back from the park and they walk in and see Toni Collette, on the couch after trying to commit suicide, and it's very intense. But to me, that's such a realistic choice that they did, and I think that's sort of what Joe was speaking to with the unconventional way that this movie relates to life, because it makes some decisions that I don't think a lot of other movies would make. And to me, it does it brilliantly. I really enjoyed the way that they weaved the comedy and the drama elements. Like you say, Justin, it's sometimes colliding with each other back to back or whatever. How do you think a better way to approach that would have been? Because obviously it's a major plot point and a major element of the film is this awful home life that he has with his mom, who loves him but has some serious issues, which is partially what attracts Marcus to Will in the first place, because he's looking for some sort of parental figure, looking for somebody to, help him with the craziness. To you, is there a better way that they could have melded that together?
I felt like there should have at least been a smoother transition instead of, okay, we're funny now, serious. Not instead of, okay, we're funny, we're slowing down, then big event happens.
I understand that point. It's just that I think it's interesting. That's kind of a negative for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this was not a bad movie. It just, that part of it felt a little clunky to me.
I thought that was one of the aspects of the film that really made it stand out, because that's kind of an unconventional narrative you don't see that often.
Which I can respect, but to me, I just felt like it could have been developed better and much more efficiently.
Okay.
Much like what you said, I think a lot of it would have benefited from the fact that there could have been a little bit more from it that would have strengthened it.
I agree, definitely. Could have used a little more run time.
Well, for me, I haven't really said my piece about it yet, but for me, it is an A+. This was the fourth time I've seen the movie. It is just as good as the first. I think Hugh Grant is phenomenal in the role. Unlike Joe, I haven't seen too many of his films. I've seen a few here and there. I think I've seen a lot of the bad ones, because I've seen like Music and Lyrics and American Dreams. I've seen some of the worst end of the Hugh Grant stuff.
No Mickey Blue Eyes or anything like that?
I've never seen Mickey Blue Eyes or 9 Months or The 4 Weddings and a Funeral. But this was actually, I think, the first movie I ever saw of his. I saw it shortly after it came out on DVD. That's first time.
High standard to me.
And I thought he really knocked it out of the park. He didn't get nominated for an Oscar, but I will say he was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical Film. And I absolutely can see why. He was so great in this. And the chemistry between him and Marcus is so good. One of the other plot techniques that I really liked, and talking about the voiceovers, Justin, as you were, is that early on in the voiceovers, we learn how Hugh Grant's character builds his day, and how he does things in units of measurement called units, and everything is each unit's a half hour. So getting my hair done, 3 units. Having lunch, 2 units. And at the end of the whole speech, he says, I don't understand how anybody can work for a living, because where do they find the time? And that just speaks to his character at the beginning of the film. He has no time for anybody but himself, and he can't even fathom, the reason he meets these women at these places like the single parents group is because he just can't be bothered with these longer term relationships, because he figures, a girl has a kid, she can't really spend too much time with me, so give her a shag and then that's it. And as the movie develops, when Marcus originally comes around, he can't stand him. Will finds him annoying when he first comes to Will's house. I can manage on my own watching TV. You don't really need to be here. But slowly but surely, he realizes that, okay, I can still do all of the same things I do. I just have a friend now to do them with, and maybe somebody that looks up to me, and et cetera, et cetera. It's such a growing character. In both aspects, really. But, of course, Marcus is 12, so he's supposed to grow and learn and stuff. But Will, being the man-child that he is, grows so remarkably in the film and in such a real way. So I give About a Boy an A+. And we are just about out of time here on the show, believe it or not. So we're going to call it a day and wrap it up. But Joe has his very own YouTube channel, and there's an extended Riddick review on there that was just recently posted. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah, guys, I recently posted my Riddick full review. I think that's the last video I uploaded. You could just type in Merlin Boss or 301 Merlino Boss, or you can just type in Film Fanatics. There'll probably be a link in one of these pages. But definitely, if you guys want to see a little more extended thoughts about my feelings on Riddick, then definitely go check that out. I think it was about 8 minutes or so. But yeah, definitely check out Film Fanatics and my channel.
And there's a lot of cool stuff on there, too. It's not just movies.
Well, yeah, I talk about movies. That's one of the primary things. I also talk about comic book-related stuff, occasionally pop culture, video games, and anime also is one of my primary features on my channel. So definitely check my channel out if you're interested in any of those things.
And you can also follow us on Facebook. We have a group called Film Fanatics with an exclamation point at the end that you can join us on. And we also have the Twitter up and running, which is at Film Fanatics Pod. And, of course, the YouTube channel for older podcasts is just Film Fanatics. Do a search on that, and you'll find our earlier podcasts as well as all the future podcasts. And go ahead and subscribe to that if you'd like. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Film Fanatics.